My name is Giselle, and this is Slow Food Live. Slow Food Live is the Slow Food USA response to quarantine, essentially, and all of us being at home. This is our way of bringing slow food into your home for you and your families. And if you're not familiar with slow food is an international grassroots movement that began in Italy 30 years ago. The mission is good, clean, and fair food for all. So of course that encompasses many layers and many dynamics. And we have many wonderful people around the country and around the world who are engaged in slow food in their own way. Among them, Philip Lee and Katherine Pryor, who are with us today. Philip Lee is the co-founder of Readers to Eaters, a publishing company that's focused on books about food for kids, essentially sort of growing literacy and food literacy in that way. And I'm going to let Philip tell you a little bit more about that. But Philip is a longtime member and advocate of slow food from Seattle to the Bay Area, a close friend to slow food in the USA, and as is Katherine Pryor, our author who's joined us here today, who's in Seattle. And I will let both of them tell you a little bit more about themselves and what they do. And I will just say that we're so grateful to have you both here today. Thanks for being here. So without any more from me, I'm going to hand this over to Philip to introduce Readers to Eaters, and then he'll introduce us to Katherine, and then we'll get reading. Thanks for being here.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Giselle. So happy to be part of the Slow Food Live. I'm Philip Lee, so I'm the publisher founder of Readers to Eaters. But I also want to say I've been a long-time chapter lead at Slow Food Seattle when I was there, and I also was on the board of the Slow Food USA. So it's a love the organization and all the things they do in terms of helping us understand, enjoy the food that we eat. And so we started a company called Readers to Eaters just about 10 years ago. In fact, the gardening theme is very appropriate because we started a month after Michelle Obama started the White House Garden, partly inspired by that, to really promote food literacy, which is really about understanding what and how we eat at one level. That's what food literacy means to us. But it's also, food literacy also means to us about using literacy as a way, using food as a way to promote literacy. So we partner with a lot of education programs like libraries to promote food system. And also we go to the eater part, like a lot of food, like farmers market, and promote reading programs with at farmers markets. And in fact, one of the best examples of the book that applies to both is what you're going to hear about soon, Katherine Pryor's book, Sylvias Spinach, and her other books. And so I will pass that to her, and she's one of our first authors, so I'm so happy she's here kicking off the story time with you all. So I'll pass it on to Katherine.
Oh, thanks, Philip. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here with you today. I don't know about you, but I really miss seeing my friends. And so it feels like an extra special treat to get to be here with you today. And thank you so much to the team at Slow Food for organizing all of these programs so we can be together and we can learn together in these very strange times. And so, as was mentioned, we do have some book giveaways today. I believe we will be giving away a copy of Zora's Zucchini and Sylvia's Spinach, but we're not just giving them away. People have to be a little creative in order to get one of these delivered to their house. What we're asking you to do, so all of my books have something called alliteration, where there's two words that start with the same letter. So you have bees, bees. Sylvia's Spinach, and Zora's Zucchini. And so what we're going to ask you to do today is to get creative. Think of your first name or any nickname that you like to be called by, and then think of a fruit or a vegetable and put those two together so we can see what the title of your book would be called. Can you do that? Let's get a little creative. And then once you have your book title, put it in the chat, and Giselle is going to randomly pick a winner at the end based on all of the awesome book titles that come in. So without further ado, I'd like to read a couple of books that I've written. I've seen some very cute stuff coming in. Let's go ahead and start talking about books. So what I want to do today with the time that we have is I'd like to read a couple of books that I've written, and then I'm going to make sure we have plenty of time for questions at the end. And you can ask me anything you want. You can ask about writing. You can ask about gardening. You can ask about any of the toys that I have here in my writing studio in my backyard in Seattle. And then if you think of a question, just type it into the chat box and we're gonna read the questions at the end and I'll answer any questions that you have. And then after I'm done reading the stories, that's when we're gonna pull all the titles for the giveaway. So start getting your titles in there, everybody. Okay, so I wanted to start today by reading my newest book, Bees, Bees. It was written by me and illustrated by Ellie Peterson, who I noticed in the chat is here with her kids today. So if you have a question for Ellie, she also might be able to answer it, which is pretty fun to have her here. So it was written by me, illustrated by Ellie Peterson, and published by Schiffer Publishing. And I wrote this book because I was worried about bees, which I know might seem a little strange to some of you. Is anyone here afraid of bees, even a little bit? It's okay. It's totally normal. I still get a little afraid of bees, but I also really love watching them move through the world. Have you ever sat in the grass or in a park and watched the bees fly from flower to flower? They are very busy. A bee can visit up to 5,000 flowers in a single day. And one of the things that they're doing when they visit those flowers includes pollinating a lot of the food we eat. So bees pollinate nuts like almonds and cashews. They pollinate berries, apples, cherries, kiwis, mangoes, all kinds of things. Bees even pollinate chocolate. So they are very, very important to us. But unfortunately, we know that some bees are in danger. Their numbers are declining for a number of reasons. It might be because they don't have enough flowers to collect pollen, or it might be because they don't have enough open space, or sometimes it's because people spray chemicals that the bees don't like. There are a lot of reasons that bees have problems. But the great thing about this problem is that it's something anyone can help fix. And I wanted to be part of helping the bees. I wanted to make my house a nice place for a bee to visit. And so I planted bee-friendly plants all over my yard. And then I sat back and I watched all the bees that visited the flowers. And I felt really good about giving them a place to collect pollen and a place where they could just be happy doing their bee thing. And so I thought kids might actually like to be part of helping bees too. And so that's why I wrote Bees, Bees about one little girl who liked watching the bees as much as I do. Ellie drew all of these really happy little bees for the end papers, which I always love. Beatrix heard a humming as she walked through the park on her way home from school. She followed the sound to a hollow oak tree. A cloud of wild bumblebees flew in and out of a hidden beehive like it was the world's busiest airport. Bee crept closer. The bees flew zigzags and crazy eights. They hovered and dove. They zipped out fast, but flew home slowly, their tiny bodies weighed down with pollen and nectar. Bee visited the hive every day. She watched the bees flit from flower to flower, buzzing with happiness as they collected food for their families. But then one day, the tree was silent. A lonely butterfly circled the oak tree looking for its friends, but its friends were gone. The next day at school, Bee told her teacher what happened. "Where did my bees go?" she asked. "I don't know," her teacher sighed. "Sometimes bees just disappear." Bee didn't like that one bit. How could a whole hive disappear? The park was quiet as she walked home. Bee looked toward the oak tree, but even the butterfly was gone. Then Bee noticed something else. The flowers around the oak tree had been cut down. Beatrix knew that bees like flowers. It's how they get all of their food. So the next time Bee's class went to the library, Bee rushed for the librarian. "What type of flowers do bees like?" she asked. "I don't know," the librarian said. "Let's find out." Bee read everything she could about bees. She learned that they like to eat pollen and nectar from lots of different flowers and that they needed lots of open space to find them. Bee also learned that bees are a type of pollinator, which means that they carry pollen from flower to flower. Without bees, blueberry, raspberry, and pumpkin plants would not be able to turn their flowers into fruit. There would be no more apples or almonds or avocados. Without bees, some of Beatrix's favorite foods would disappear. So Bee began to make a plan. In the early wet days of spring, Bee planted wildflower seeds around the base of her tree. She planted mint and clover and sunflowers. The seedlings began to sprout. The flowers began to bloom. But the tree stayed silent. Bee did her science fair project on bees. She handed out wildflower seeds to everyone at school and asked them to help feed her bees. And all over the neighborhood, their seedlings sprouted. Their flowers bloomed. Still, the tree was silent. Beatrix began to lose hope. She sat by her tree and cried sad tears at the thought of losing her bees forever. But then she heard it. A single bumblebee buzzed past, landing on one of the sunflowers. She saw another and another. Bees flew out of a nest in the ground near the hollow oak tree. They hovered and dove. They flew zigzags and crazy eights. They zipped out to find pollen and nectar, then flew home slow and fat to feed their family. Bees were back. So I hope you liked that story. It's my newest book. And I just wanted to let everybody who's watching know that one thing anyone can do to help the bees is to plant flowers that bees like. There's a great list of them here in the back of the book. Ellie Peterson, the illustrator, is a science teacher by day, and so I think she had a lot of fun drawing all of the different types of flowers that she put in Bee's garden. And you know, I like to do something where I'll take bee seeds. I don't know if anybody's ever seen a packet like this, but there's collections of seeds that you can get. And it's full of different kinds of flowers that bees in your area would like. And so sometimes I just like to spread them around my yard, or I have a little abandoned alley behind my house, and we'll sprinkle the seeds there. And it's really fun to kind of see what comes up and what the bees like to graze on. I've seen pollinator gardens in all sorts of places. I see them in schools, I see them in traffic roundabouts. I've even seen them in the middle of downtown Seattle, where I live, in the middle of the city. We'll have a little pollinator garden and the bees find it. And another easy thing that you can do is to leave yellow dandelions in your yard. Dandelions have tons of pollen, which you'll know have you ever dusted your nose with a yellow dandelion? There's a ton of pollen in it. And it's one of the first food sources that bees look for every spring. So next time you go outside, look for flowering plants that you see and see if you can find any bees on those flowers. And then another thing you might think about is places that you might plant some flowers to make life a little bit better for the bees. And so the next story that I wanted to read with you is Sylvias Spinach. It was written by me, it was illustrated by Anna Raff, and it was published by Readers to Eaters. So Philip, who's here with us today, was my editor on this book, and it was the first picture book that I ever wrote, and so it's still very, very special to me. Sylvia is a girl who, like Beatrix, has a problem. But before I start, I have a question. Does anyone here today have a specific vegetable or a fruit that you love to eat? Does anybody have a fruit you love to eat? I know this time of year, my sons and I just cannot eat enough strawberries. I would eat them every day if I could. And we've also been really loving fresh spring asparagus and having lots of tender baby greens in our salads at night with dinner. But I also know that some of the foods that I mentioned today and some of the things, some fun ones in the chat there, some of the things that other people are mentioning, people here might not be crazy about. You may not love the foods that I just mentioned. And so the next question that I have is if any of you have a food that you just can't stand. Does anybody here have a food that they maybe don't like to eat? It's okay, everybody's got one. For me, it used to be tomatoes. I didn't start liking tomatoes until I was 25 years old. But now I love tomatoes. And I'll talk a little bit more about why that might be after I read the story. But first, here is Sylvias Spinach. Sylvia Spivens always said no to spinach. No spinach with my eggs, no spinach in my soup, no spinach on my sandwich, no spinach ever. Sylvia's parents sighed as she pulled the spinach from her lasagna, plucked the spinach from her salad, and pushed every last leaf to the tippiest tip of her plate. But it's good for you, said Sylvia's mother. You need your growing food, said Sylvia's father. No, thank you, said Sylvia. On a drizzly gray day in March, Sylvia's teacher had an announcement. Class, we are going to start a garden. We'll grow peas and lettuce and carrots. We'll grow potatoes and tomatoes and squash. We'll grow cucumbers and radishes and spinach. Blech, said Sylvia. The teacher handed each student a packet of seeds. And when you know it, Sylvia got spinach. Double bleh, said Sylvia. Sylvia tried to trade for Penelope's peas. No way, said Penelope, rolling the little green balls in her hand. She tried to trade for cucumbers, tomatoes, or squash. Nope, said Carlos. Forget it, said Terry. Sorry, said Sam. Sylvia asked her teacher to please, please, please give her another vegetable. Any other vegetable. I'm sorry, Sylvia, said her teacher. There aren't any more. Sylvia was stuck with spinach. Sylvia tore open the packet and looked at the little brown seeds in her hand. Sylvia's seeds looked so unspinachy. But Sylvia's a really good student. So she followed her teacher's instructions and covered each seed with a thin layer of dirt. Then she sprinkled the seeds with water and put them in the classroom's sunniest window. Now what? Asked Sylvia. Now we wait, said her teacher. Days passed and the dirt still looked like dirt. The peas were the first to sprout, shooting up out of the dirt like tiny beanstalks. Sylvia's dirt still looked like dirt. The cucumbers and squash sprouted next, sending 2 round leaves out of each seed. Sylvia's dirt still looked like dirt. One by one, all of the other seeds sprouted. Stupid spinach, muttered Sylvia. But on the first sunny day in April, Sylvia's spinach sprouted, sending 2 long shoots poking out of the dirt. The plants were smaller than Sylvia's smallest finger. Look at your smallest finger. But they were strong enough to push their way toward the sun. There you are, Sylvia shouted. My spinach! Every day, Sylvia checked on her baby spinach. Good morning, she whispered. She watered her spinach and made sure it got just exactly the right amount of sunlight. And every day, Sylvia's spinach grew a little bit taller and a little bit stronger. And on a blue sky day in May, the students planted their garden. They planted peas and carrots and lettuce. They planted potatoes and tomatoes and squash. They planted cucumbers and radishes, and Sylvia planted her spinach. Weeks passed. The sun shone. The rain rained. And every day, Sylvia's spinach got a little bit bigger and a little bit rounder. The peas sent long, wavy shoots up toward the sky. The cucumbers and squash grew big, rough leaves that even the slugs wouldn't eat. By the last week of school, Penelope's pea plants had beautiful white flowers, but no peas. Terry's tomato plants had tiny yellow star flowers, but no tomatoes. Carlos's cucumbers and Sam's squash had big yellow flowers the size of Sylvia's hand, but no cucumbers and no squash. In fact, there were only 3 vegetables ready to eat in the garden that day: lettuce, radishes, and Sylvia's spinach. Class, the best part about having a garden is eating what we've grown, said Sylvia's teacher. So the class nibbled on fresh lettuce. They bit into fat red radishes, and everyone munched on bright green spinach leaves. Everyone except Sylvia. Sylvia sniffed the spinach. Smell bad. So then Sylvia stuck out her tongue it didn't taste bad. So finally, Sylvia opened up her mouth and bit that spinach leaf in half. Crunch! Not bad, said a very surprised Sylvia. And as the other students picked a little of this and a little of that to take home to their families, Sylvia picked bunches and bunches of spinach. After school, Sylvia raced home to deliver her spinach. Look, Mom, look, Dad, called Sylvia, look at my spinach. It's beautiful, said her mother. It looks scrumptious, said her father. But Sylvia, what will we do with it? Asked her mother. You don't like spinach. I tried it, Mom, Sylvia said. It's good. We can do anything we want with it. And so that night, Sylvia tried spinach in her lasagna. She nibbled spinach in her salad. And wouldn't you know it, Sylvia's spinach was delicious. The next day, Sylvia ate spinach with her eggs. She ate spinach in her soup. She ate spinach on her sandwich. And that was the summer that Sylvias Spibbins said yes to spinach. So thank you so much for reading that book with me. This book, Sylvias Spinach, is based on a true story. There really was a little girl who couldn't stand spinach until she grew it in her school garden. And some of you might be wondering how Sylvia could go from hating to loving a food in just a few short months. And when I wrote the story, I thought it was because she had so much fun growing it and because veggies fresh from the garden taste so delicious. But then someone gave me another explanation. So think for a minute. Where do you taste things? Anybody need a hint? On your tongue. You taste things on your tongue. What is your tongue covered in? Taste buds. And did you know that just like the rest of you, your tongue and your taste buds are still growing? So if you don't like a food at first bite, it might just be because your tongue hasn't grown into it yet. And now I know some of you brought a leafy green with you today. Does anybody here have a green? I have a little bit. I wish I could share all of my spinach leaves with you. my little lunch salad here. So if you have your green, take your leafy green, and I'd like to invite you to try the Sylvias Spibbins taste test with me now. So does anybody remember what she did first? First we sniff. Then, do you remember what she did next? Next we lick. And then finally, what did Sylvia do as soon as she was brave enough? Crunch! What did everybody think? Did you like it? Was it a new food? Was it something you'd tried before? I've eaten a lot of spinach, and I still really like it every time I eat it. But if you're looking for a fun activity, I have a couple ideas you can try. So first of all, for everybody who just tried their leafy green with me, I just want to say, the thing is, it doesn't matter if you like it or not. The thing that matters is that you were brave enough to try something that you weren't sure what your tongue was going to think about. And so I wanted to offer up a couple of fun activities. So take your parent or maybe an older sister or an older brother to the kitchen and look for a food that you've never eaten before. Look for a food you've never eaten. Then try the Sylvias taste test and see what you think. And if you're feeling really brave, like really extra, extra brave, think about trying a food that in the past, maybe your tongue didn't like, to see if your tongue has grown into it. So thank you for all of the trying and the tasting and the reading with me today. If you liked any of these books, unfortunately, I did not quite have time to read Zora's Zucchini, but that's another fun garden book from Readers to Eaters, that this is the perfect time of year to start getting your zucchini in the garden, but it's maybe a little bit of a cautionary tale, what happens if you grow too much. So if you liked any of these books that I've read today, if you're lucky enough to have one, please consider supporting your local bookstore. Many of them are mailing books or doing curbside pickup, and they could really use our business right now. But if you don't have a local bookstore, or if you just want to do the easy thing and support another amazing endeavor, please consider supporting Bookshop. That's you can find them at bookshop.org. They can mail your books directly to you. And today, Readers to Eaters will be donating 10% from each sale of one of their books, so either Sylvia or Zora, to Slow Food. So it's also a fundraiser for a really great cause. Both of my publishers offer discounts on bulk purchases if you're interested in bringing them into a school or a nonprofit setting. And you can always contact me through my website, which is katherinepryor.com, if you'd like to learn more. I also, just one more quick thing to mention, both Sylvias Spinach and Zora Zucchini are available as audiobooks. And so if you like to play around with books that you read and also have an audiobook version, that can be really fun. And we also got very lucky lately. Sylvias Spinach was just translated into Spanish, and I just this week got the Spanish audiobook. So that can be another fun thing too. If you're interested in learning more about the books and reading them again, it can be really fun to read along with an audiobook. And then finally, I want to go back to our giveaway before we do questions, because I saw some really amazing title suggestions coming in. So I don't know if Giselle has had time to look through some of the titles that came in.
Yeah, these are really great. You are sending them in, and make sure you check out this cool list we came up with. So everything from Hip Hop Huckleberry to Finn's Figs to Lynn's Luffas. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm saying that right. And there's another one in there that I don't know how to pronounce, which is Heidi's Heavenly Hericos.
Ooh, love it.
I don't know if I'm saying that right, but
yeah,
the alliteration is spot on. And Brian's Bananas, Rowan's Rutabagas, that's a good one. Peter's Passion Fruits, I love that. Mel's Mushrooms. These are great, you guys, really great. So I've already pulled our 2 winners. I put them into a list that jumbles them up and gives me 1, and we're gonna do 2 because Readers to Eaters generously gave us 2 copies of both books. And what's really fun about this, I think, is that we have the copy in Spanish of Sylvias Spinach, which as you're reading, Katherine, I'm thinking whether you already speak Spanish and this is just gonna be a wonderful addition to your library, or you wanna learn vegetable names in Spanish, you can get into those couple pages and learn all the names of those vegetables. So we're gonna send 2 sets of these books to, drum roll, you guys wanna do a little drum roll wherever you are? We have Laura's Lovage, so great, and also Estrella's Elephant Garlic.
Ooh, I love it.
So congrats to Laura and Estrella. You have 2 new books coming to you to add to your library, and I'll be in touch with you for how to get your address to me so I can ship those off to you. And for all of those of you out there who didn't win the books just now, thanks for making an entry. But if you want to add those to your library, make sure you do what Katherine just mentioned. Call your local bookshop or get onto bookshop.org. It benefits independent bookstores, especially very small ones, and Readers to Eaters, and Slow Food, thanks to Readers to Eaters. So check that out. Get those books in your house. We do have a couple questions, some fun ones. Mel is curious about what your favorite toys are and why. Katherine, I know you have a couple littles in your
Oh, my toys back here?
Yeah, I think there's some curiosity about that.
Yeah. So this is probably my very favorite. This was my stuffed armadillo, you know, because every kid needs a stuffed armadillo that I slept with every night from the time I was probably 8 years old until much older than I should probably publicly admit. And this little armadillo traveled with me on planes when I was traveling with my family or going to visit someone. This little armadillo went camping with me. This little armadillo went everywhere with me. And so, you know, my studio would just not be complete without having my favorite lovey here. And then, let's see, another favorite toy. Does anybody remember the book Paddington Bear? This was my Paddington Bear from when I was a little kid, and I must have never played with it because it's still in perfect shape. And when I found this in a box in my dad's garage, it had a little note that said, "Please look after this bear. Thank you." And so I felt like I better. So yeah, those are 2 of my like favorite little stuffed animals back here. And then a couple more of my very favorite little things are, I have a few friends who are artists and like to support artists. And so when Bees come out, I had a friend of mine sent me this beautiful, it's a piece of wood with bees and flowers painted and stuck on it. I had another friend send me this little bee from a sculptor friend of hers. And then Ellie Peterson, who is on our call with us today, made these beautiful little bees seeds packets. And so we gave these away to bookstores all over the country and librarians all over the country when the book came out. And so this is something I keep in my office just to remind me that sometimes an idea, a story can reach out farther than you'll ever know. Because I think about all of the librarians and all of the bookstore owners who, when they got these in the mail, they planted them in their homes or in their communities. And so I love the idea that flowers are blooming all over the country because of these, and we'll never know where. So those are some favorites.
That's lovely. And it's a great little segue into another question is if bees like lilacs. And I wonder what's in that seed mix. Or you're in Seattle, Katherine. What flowers do you see bees loving outside your window?
So we have a wild lilac, which I wish I could take you out to my yard with me right now, but I don't think my signal would reach out there. We have an enormous wild lilac bush that we planted it was very small a few years ago, and now it's taller than I am. And the bees have been all over that this spring. The other thing we have a lot of is lavender. So we were really lucky. We moved into a house that already had some lavender planted, and so we planted more. And then another thing that I did when I was trying to convert my yard to a really pollinator-friendly space is I planted clover. We had some lawn in our yard. We don't have a big yard, but we have yard, and there was lawn. And so I've been putting clover in there over the years, any place there's a little bare patch, so that when the little clover flowers come up, I'll see bees visiting those a lot. And then it's a great excuse not to weed your dandelions, I will say. You just leave them there and say it's for the bees. And then the other thing that we see in my yard that the bees really like to visit is we have an Asian pear tree, and we've seen them a lot there. We have nectarines and a plum tree also. And so I definitely, different times of year when those different trees are blooming, we see a lot of bees coming to visit those. So we've tried to give them some other flowers that they can nibble on so that they help pollinate all of the fruit trees and the berry bushes in our yard.
Excellent. And a great excuse to add more flowers to your world. We're always trying, I'm an avid vegetable gardener, and I always say, well, the vegetables flower too, and they like those too. But
I was the same way, where I was always all about gardening whatever I could eat. Like if I was going to plant it, I wanted to be able to eat it. And this has been such a beautiful excuse to plant flowers.
Same. I got a few little wildflower packets this year for the first time, and they're in and they're growing.
Oh, that's great.
But then in the fall, like you said, I will just leave my garden as is and say it's for the bees, and we'll look at it next spring. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Katherine. This has been really lovely. And to all of you out there who joined us for this story hour, thanks for being here. I'm going to follow up with all of you in an email that will have links to Readers to Eaters, to Katherine's website, to where you can buy those books online via Readers to Eaters and bookshops so that it will benefit Slow Food. And again, check out your local bookstore, call them, see how they're doing, and if you can support them in this way. And tune in on May 20th. We're doing another story hour with another Readers to Eaters author. It's going to be really fun. We're going to talk about ramen a little bit as a little sneak peek of your subject matter. And we're really excited to have another one on the calendar, but really excited today to have had you, Katherine. This is lovely. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. This was so fun, and I loved getting to visit with everybody virtually.
Good. I was just thinking that you're kind of marvelous, because it must be hard to do that without little faces staring back at you.
I did have to send my kids off on a long car ride with my husband.
Yeah, I'm a teacher, and without the feedback, I'm not going to know how to do this. So thank you for your energy and your time today. That was really wonderful. Your books are fantastic. So we'll keep an eye out for whatever you get up to next. And all of you out there, keep an eye out on Readers to Eaters and Katherine and Slow Food. And if you need some seeds for your garden, the Plant a Seed campaign is still going. You can get free shipping with the code Slow Food Live if that's something you're needing in your life. Otherwise, Katherine and Philip, thanks again so much. We're so happy.
Thank you, Giselle. Thanks, Kathy. Yeah.
Thank you.
And everybody take care. Have a wonderful day.